Hi, everybody. This is Janice Masters, the Shaman Mama from janicemasters.com. And from this page where I'm broadcasting from, which is a Facebook page called the Shaman Mama. And I'm someone who has been working with women for over 40 years to assist and facilitate their consciousness, their empowerment, their hey, howdy, friend yourself, Joan Silva. Hi, Megan. Thank you for being here. And their work and play in the world, their roles in the world. And it's been incredibly exciting work. And to tell you the truth, it's gotten even more exciting in recent years, which is so gratifying for me. Some of you know that originally I was a psychotherapist for 22 years. And then when I realized that my work was veering off the path of what you could honestly call psychotherapy. Susan, hi, thank you so much for being here. I dropped my psychotherapy license, which some people thought was a crazy thing to do, but it put me in really clear and perfect alignment with the work that I came here to do and been doing for the last, I guess it was about 16 years ago that I dropped my license. So it's been a great ride and still is. So today we're here for what I'm calling the Living on the Spiral Path show with me. And I call it this because I've called my coaching and my life guidance for women Spiral Path Coaching. Living on the Spiral Path means that we're constantly moving higher and higher, and also paradoxically deeper and deeper through issues that we think maybe they should go away, they shouldn't come back again, we shouldn't have to go through them again. But each time we go through them, we are in a different state of consciousness, and the issue is not the same as where we left it. Energy is always moving, things are always changing. So it's a really exciting ride on the spiral path of life. So today we are going to talk about, this is actually part 3 of the series that I'm doing on awakening, spiritual awakening. And this one's called Awakening, Neither Here Nor There. Now that's kind of what my son would call an old-fashioned term, neither here nor there. My mom used to use that a lot. And it basically means you're sort of at loose ends. If you can picture Wile E. Coyote suspended between the two cliffs, that's the most perfect example of neither here nor there. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And as I did last week on Thursday, I pulled a card from my favorite Gaia Oracle deck. I thought, oh, let's get some deeper guidance to let us begin this live stream with. So I picked a card, and lo and behold, exactly the same card that was picked last time. Now, mind you, I shuffled the cards and I cut the deck and I this and that and the other thing. So obviously, this is a message that is really important for us right now. And this card shows the dove soaring in the air, and the message is rising above. So I'm going to read to you once again what this message is for us. Rising above, clarity, freedom, solution. The white dove depicted on this card flies high above the earth and is able to see things from a higher perspective. She suggests that you do the same. You cannot do this physically, but you can do it mentally by disconnecting emotionally from the present situation. No matter what the situation is, and we have many choices these days, stop thinking about it. You are currently too close to see things clearly. A simple solution exists. This will become clear to you once you let go. Stop focusing on this situation for a while. Bring your awareness within. Close your eyes, relax, meditate, surrender, let go, take a walk in the park, dance, have fun. Do whatever it takes to detach from things for a while, and the solution will become obvious when the time is right. The affirmation is, I surrender this situation to the universal power of love. I trust that all is well in my life. I look at my life from a higher perspective. I am divinely guided. All is clear in my life. I am safe. Gotta love the way that feels, right? So rising above. So let's, same card. Yeah, that's what I said. Me too, Megan. Chills, baby, chills. I felt the exact same way. Like, okay, well, then obviously this is the message for us. So we are, if we're neither here nor there, and the message is to rise above, what does that mean for us? Let's go back to Wile E. Coyote. Now, we all know in the cartoon what happens. What happens? Does he rise above? No, he plummets to the ground, and usually an anvil or a rock or something falls on him. So if he were able to rise above, where does that place him? Places him in safety, places him out of harm's way. So whatever situations we're dealing with as we walk this spiral path, let's remember that spiral path of awakening, we may be neither here nor there, which means we don't feel grounded, we don't feel centered, we don't feel clear, and we can still rise above. So let's talk about some of the things that keep us in that place of feeling neither here nor there. Awakening is generally about pretty big challenges that happen, that shake up the status quo, that leave us kind of baffled and unclear about where to put our foot next, what to do next. Maybe there are big decisions to be made. You know, we're looking at a collective awakening that is being triggered massively in the United States by what's going on in the White House and in government. We are really neither here nor there, because we're not in the old reality where we, basically fundamentally trusted government was going to go along as predicted. We still had two parties that fought with each other, et cetera, et cetera. But now we're in a situation that some of us really could not have imagined would come to pass. So the challenge is that we have to let go of the old way of believing and trusting and somehow find a way to rise above. Okay, so that's collectively. There are other things going on in the world. We've got all kinds of natural disasters that are happening. Perhaps you're in a place where you've been affected by one. We were mildly affected by Hurricane Irma here, but I've been in bigger hurricanes than that. People have been affected by fires, by earthquakes, by all kinds of difficult situations. So if we're neither here nor there, the old reality's been destroyed and the new one has not yet been built, which really is, that's what transition is. And that's why we say that transitions are notoriously tricky. Even in my work as a therapist years ago, if a client came to me and she was going through a divorce, or a loved one had died, or she was changing careers, we always talked about the tricky nature of transitions. Tricky because we don't, if you can picture it with your arms outstretched, you no longer have the old reality to hold on to. And if you've got any chance at all of grabbing onto the new reality that's waiting for you, even if you don't know what it is yet, you have to let go of the old one. There's that old saying, between the dock and the boat, make a choice. Because if you don't make a choice to step on the dock or step into the boat, you're going to end up in the drink. Okay? So we have to make that choice. So anybody have any questions or comments so far? The comments are showing up. I think they are anyway. Megan's was the last comment. Chills, baby, chills. Yeah, that's still really appropriate. So, when a transition happens, okay, the old order of things falls away somehow, whether it's divorce, illness, death, an election, whatever it is, it falls away. So we don't have that to ground ourselves in, even if it was something that was unpleasant, okay? And so what we go into is what I call the slowdown. No comment, comment check. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, because last time, I had trouble being able to scroll down and see comments. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. Oh, Catherine, hi. I'm so happy to see you here, and I'm very glad that this is helpful for you today. I'm really, really glad in my heart about that. So, you know, what we are very loath to do in this culture is respect the slowdown. I wrote a blog post many years ago, was inspired by Spirit completely, and I'll post a link to it later in comments. And it's called Rolling with the Natural Cycle of Things. Because what happens is something happens that we call the stress. That's what triggers the change or the transition. Once the transition has been triggered by the stress, and that could be good or bad stress, right? What happens next, which we are often unaware of, and even when we're aware of it, we hate to respect it. That's called the slowdown. Because what needs to happen is that there needs to be time for the dust to settle. There is a process internally and sometimes externally about moving through the transition, because you can't push it, you can't pull it, you can't force it, you can't insist upon it. Awakening is something that has a life of its own. And transitions are the same way. You can try to hurry it, but as I learned for myself, I don't know, a decade or so ago, I'm a very strong-willed person, and I'm quite capable of making something happen, but that does not always work out the best for me. So I have learned not to try to make things happen. So because we live in a culture where accomplishment and achievement and hard work are kind of worshipped in a left brain sort of way, it's difficult for us to give ourselves permission to be in the slowdown. One of the ways that a slowdown really insists upon being respected is when we are in deep grief, when we have, for instance, lost a loved one through death. When my mom passed away, I just sat for a long time. I couldn't do anything. I mean, if I wanted to push the river of transition, I couldn't have it. I didn't have it in me. And so even if we have it in us, even if, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to get a new job, or I'm going to find a new guy, even if we can do those things, it's really not in our best interest to do so. Sabrina, hello. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you hopping over the pond to join us. So again, even if we can push the transition, that's not going to be helpful. At some point, we're going to have to process our way through it, okay? Now, in order to surrender to the transition, to the slowdown, we have to muster a whole lot of trust. So then the question becomes, and I pose this to my clients who are having trouble with trust, what exactly is it that you place your trust in? If you're placing your trust in a higher power or in, I've asked myself that question, Sabrina, how slow can I go? And will I ever get started again if I go slow? What exactly is it that you place your trust in? Do you have a concept of God or higher power or the universe? Do you have a concept of your soul? Is that something you place your trust in? Do you have a concept of your inner guidance? Do you have a concept of life as something that you can place your trust in? Because if we're still operating out of a childhood-based idea of the, I'll call them the spiritual authorities, like God or higher power or the universe or even ourselves, if we're in a place of believing that we have a flawed thing that we're going to place our trust in, then it's hard to trust, okay? But if you begin to really examine the nature of life and the natural order of things, and that's why I named that blog post Following the Natural Cycles of Things. Okay, when I trust in others, I am always disappointed and hurt, says Joan. Can I gently challenge that? Is that always the case? Whenever you trust others, you are always disappointed or hurt? let us know, because we'll follow up on that. So again, it's really important to know what exactly are you placing your trust in. How about yourself? Can you trust in your own intuition? Can you trust in your inner guidance? Have you kept track for long enough to see that that is a worthy place for your trust? Joan says, no, let me restate. Quite often when I expect them to do or behave in a certain way. Okay, so what I hear in there is a should. I hear an expectation. And to simplify this, when we have a should, an expectation, most of the time we're going to be disappointed. So again, that goes back to, can I trust the natural order of things? Can I leave things alone and let them flow and trust that if I, and here's where 4 little rules for life come in. I've known about these for many years and I love them. First one is show up. The second one is pay attention. The third one is speak your truth. And here's the fourth one, don't be attached to the outcome. That's where we let go of, Joan, the shoulds and the expectations that result in us suffering when they're not met. So when we're in the slowdown, we have an opportunity to just be. We have an opportunity to allow, seems like a funny way to say it, but to allow life to have its way with us. Because one way or another, life is going to have its way with us. We can fight it tooth and nail, which results in a lot of suffering because resistance is born of suffering. Or we can surrender to the process of life. You know, in therapy and I think less so in coaching, but definitely in therapy, you often hear the phrase, trust the process, trust the process. Why? Because no matter what you're feeling about anything, no matter how deep your pain is, if you trust the process of being present for it, it will transform into something else at some point. All emotion, all energy moves in a kind of a bell curve. So it begins, it rises, it peaks, and then it begins to fall, it diminishes, it fades away, and guess what? Some other kind of energy comes up and something new is happening. So trust the process can be applied across the board. Susan says, that's where I was when you first found me, transitioning through a broken heart, a broken dream and disappointment in the trust I put in a person I loved. Yeah, I get that. Try as I might, there was no way I could speed up that transition. Oh, this brings me tears. As I was giving up trying, you found me. Boy, that really touches my heart, Susan, because, gosh, that's such a perfect example of surrendering to life. As you say, there was no way you could speed up that transition. Somehow, instinctively, intuitively, you knew that. I knew that too when I was going through my divorce. I sure tried like hell. But the outcome of that was that my ego ended up in pieces, which was a really good thing because I had a lot of ego to release and to reshape and to reform. So what happened when, as you say, I found you, Susan? What happened to the transition that you were already in the process of? Were you able to relax into and trust it? Can you share with us simply about outcomes? Because we're really interested here in how do we be in that transition? How do we be in that slowdown and know that at some point, it's kind of like being in the ocean and being swallowed up by a wave for a minute. Well, if you relax, that wave is going to come back up on shore and spit you out onto the sand. But what generally happens is we fight. And we fight and we struggle, and then we're tired, and then we're in trouble. So again, what do we place our trust in? Do you have a sense of what you place your trust in? And what it is, how you can define this thing that you place your trust in, whether it's life, whether it's higher power, whether it's your soul, whether it's your inner guidance. My husband and I were talking about this the other day because he had an impulse, an intuitive impulse, to send a text message to an acquaintance of his whom he knew had lost his teenage son about less than a year ago. And so Dwight wrote to John and said, just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. I know you're going through such a hard time right now, and you're in my heart. And John wrote back and said, wow, this is amazing. Today is the 6th-month anniversary of my son's passing. It's so amazing that you chose today to send this message to me. I really appreciate it. So Dwight and I were talking about how far we've come in trusting our intuition. He said, I always trust my intuition, always. And it never steers me wrong. And that's kind of where the magic happens, he said. Because he felt that what happened in sending the message to John on this particular day ended up with something magical that was meaningful to John. It happens to both of us. Years ago, I started keeping a little journal that I carried with me all over the place. This had to be it's before I met him, so it was over 30 years ago. I carried this little journal around, and I kept track of every time I got an intuitive hit about something and what I did with that. Did I follow it or did I not follow it, and what was the outcome? Susan says, I was on the fence. He was trying to convince me to go back, give him a second chance. My heart said go. My mind said go slow. My soul said no, maybe in the next life. You reinforced my soul's message. Okay, that's very clear. And I love the delineation. My heart said go. My mind said go slow. My soul said no, maybe in the next life. And then I came along into Susan's life and reinforced her soul's message, maybe in the next life. I recall that you and I talked about the fact that sometimes soulmates just are not positioned to be together in that kind of a relationship in a particular lifetime. And it's one of the most painful things to deal with in life. I really appreciate you sharing that, Susan. It definitely sheds light. So I urge you to keep a little journal of your intuition if you don't already have a really deep trust in it. Write down what your intuitive hits are. Write down, did I follow it or not? And then what was the outcome, if you did follow it or if you didn't follow it. Nothing will deepen your trust in your own intuition faster than that. So I'm just going to talk for a little minute here about my Facebook group that you may be interested in if you are not already a part of it. It's called Woman's Miracle Circle. And as I like to say, it's not your mama's Law of Attraction group. It's not your mama's Miracle Circle. We are, do we use the Law of Attraction? Sure, because the Law of Attraction is the way stuff happens. However, we take it much deeper than that. Because in order to really clear the path for a miracle, you've got to go deep into your own shit and get it out of the way. It isn't just about your limited thinking. It's about old patterns. It's about ways of being, ways of doing things. And it's about this whole trust issue. Joan says, a friend during hypnotherapy appointment met her soulmate not in physical form. She so deeply wanted to stay with him, and the therapist got concerned couldn't bring her back. It was so painful for her to realize her soulmate was not on the planet with her this time. Not easy. Susan says, it's making me tear up now too. Yes, I have a friend who encountered her soulmate who was not in this physical realm. And she had what you could call a relationship with him for a while, but it wasn't very satisfying because he was not physical. He was not in this realm, which she was, which your friend in the hypnotherapy session is in this physical realm. And it's painful because the connection is so deep and so poignant, and probably there have been lifetimes spent together. But again, this is one of those awakening challenges. What are we challenged to if we have to surrender the dream of being with a particular person? What does that open for us? So if you're interested in coming and joining my Woman's Miracle Circle, it is a really juicy place. You will get a free Art of Miracles map that I've just created and made available. And there's some juicy interaction there, and there's some wonderful things coming that are going to be a lot of fun. And it's a way to not only become a better miracle manifester, it's also a way to deepen your connection with your soul. That's the part I don't usually advertise because, people think that's a little too woo, but it's not too woo for me, and I don't think it's too woo for you. Susan, is that grief that you're feeling, or is your heart simply touched by the topic that we were exploring at that moment? I don't want to ignore what you shared, that the conversation was making you tear up. That's another thing about where we are now in this awakening, neither here nor there. You may have noticed, even though I'm sure everybody on this call is deeply sensitive and highly intuitive and very empathic, we're even more so now. And so the heart is open, and so the tears come very easily these days. There's so many things that make us tear up or make our hearts fill up. And that really is something to be treasured, isn't it? Susan said, I'm touched by your reaction, and that I truly must give in and wait till next time around. Yeah, that's the surrender for now, and that's really the lesson, isn't it? A couple of shows ago, I mentioned that I created a very inexpensive online course with kind of a funny title, but I named it this because this is what really made sense to me given my own experience. It's called Who Signed Me Up for This? And it's basically a journaling course that has a series of questions that allow you to explore what your life lessons and challenges are this time, and how to really go deeply into them, and how to know when you've finally gotten the lesson and can close that chapter. I'll put a link to that in the comments as well. So I vowed to keep this to half an hour because I respect your time, and I'm tremendously grateful for you being here, all of you. I really, really enjoy doing these. Catherine says, yes, lots of tears as I hit a deep pattern from childhood the last few days. Oh, Catherine, my heart is really hugging you right now. And my hope is that hitting that deep pattern means that you are able to move into healing of that pattern from childhood. Yeah, who signed me up for this indeed? I know it gets a reaction, doesn't it, that title? So I will put a link to the Facebook group, and I will put a link to the online course. And please join me again on Thursday. I do a Facebook Live Living on the Spiral Path show on this page every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Eastern. I love you all very much. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you around. Janice Masters, the Shaman Mama from JaniceMasters.com. Bye-bye.